I've been waiting for quite a while to have this talk. I know that, because of like everyone is busy and different times around the globe. So we have some of the partners here, and I'm sure all of the others will be able to watch the recording. But first of all, we'll just say a quick hi. How are you guys? You're all good? Everyone is healthy? Everyone is good? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Awesome. So that's number one. I'm happy that we all got through this crazy COVID period healthy, and we're good, and we can really reflect on the situation, what's happening in the world, and see what's next and what we can create out of this. I've been through so much in the past 2 years. I will try to kind of like share my experience and what I've been through and what I've been doing and what I've been creating and how this affects FreshBiz. And I want to share with you guys something new and exciting that I'm working on, and see how we can basically collaborate this global power that we have to keep on bringing cool, new, important stuff into the world. Okay?
Yep, sure.
Cool. So I'll start with a quick brief on the past 2 years regarding what was going on with FreshBiz and with me personally, and what I've been researching, developing, and creating, and then we can see how everything kind of like comes together. So as you know, when COVID started, basically FreshBiz came to a pause. No one could done any offline workshops. So for FreshBiz, that really means that there is no business, not in Israel, not anywhere around the globe. Nothing we can really do about it. There wasn't any online version ready yet or anything like that. So it got me to the point that I needed to reinvent myself, basically. And I remember that from day one, I saw the coronavirus as an accelerator for things that should be happening around the globe. And instead of like taking 10 or 20 years, we kind of like squeezed it into 2 years. I think that on a humanity level, it's amazing that someone pulled the handbrake and stopped everything so we can reflect on what's going on. And I try to do the same thing. And when everything stopped for me as a business, so I understood that I have 3 options on what's possible. And those are kind of like the 3 mindsets of the FreshBiz game that we have on the slides. Remember the slide with the 3 different mindsets? So that's kind of like where we all found ourselves. And the basic one was like, victimizing the event and like, okay, shit happens. Let's see what's possible. I hope that the government will pay me enough money, whatever. But that's a victimizing mindset. And that for sure wasn't the approach I want to take. And the second one is, of course, the responsive approach, which, okay, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do over Zoom. Let's see what other products we can develop that kind of suit to the situation. But that's, again, it's responsive. It's not really exciting. I wasn't passionate about finding ways to deliver things through Zoom. So I went to the entrepreneurial approach and mindset, and I kind of like looked inside and I asked myself, what's new is waiting to be born through me at this time. And I took, I guess, a few weeks up to about 2 months or so just to inner search. What is it that I'm looking for, or what is it that I'm eager to share? What's my new message to the world? And since I knew that I cannot really approach companies because I don't have the Fresh Biz workshop, and I have a few talks, but that wasn't like the way I wanted to deliver it, I started developing new workshops. And the first one that I developed was one that is called From Fear to Love. And it was aimed at individuals. It didn't have any business context to it. It was just like me sharing ideas about the journey that I saw a lot of people trying to do through COVID, because it raised a lot of fear in many people. And I figured out that what's needed now is kind of like understanding the source of the fear and how we can basically transform this into love energy. How can we use this to get excited about the new times that are coming and not be in a scarcity mindset of what is gone or what might go wrong or what is damaged, but rather how can we find the possibilities. And I kind of like posted like 5 different posts on Facebook saying that I'm going to do a workshop that is called From Fear to Love, and who would like to join me. And I got about 17 people joining me for 3 days, going through that workshop. It took me about, I think, 4 or 5 days to get the workshop booked. And then a good friend said, okay, if you have one booked so fast, you should schedule 2 more at least. So I scheduled 2 more, and that was like, right at the heart of quarantine. It was like between quarantines, maybe one was even as we were under quarantine. Like, it was really crazy times for people to come together for a live event of 3 days through the early days of COVID. It was June, right? June 2020, right? June 2020 it was. So like really kind of like underground workshop or something like that. That was the vibe of it. Going up north in Israel, hoping not to get caught by the police. That kind of vibe. But it was amazing. It was really an awesome, epic experience. I really got to go and research what is fear? Why do we fear? What scares us? It was kind of like a combination between science and spirituality. I was talking about vibrations, and I was talking about education and the old systems and all of that stuff. And this one workshop turned into 3, and those 3 turned into 7. And I did another one, which is called, how do I translate it to English? It's basically, it was called From Desire to Creation. Okay? I understood that once you get to a vibration of love, then you have this desire to do things, and you want to turn it into creation. So I did one of those, and then I did one which is called Freedom, and then I created one which is called From Fear to Freedom, and I did 4 of those. So I did about 14, 15 workshops over the past 2 years, which were really significant for my journey and for the journey of the people that attended those workshops. It was really unique, really spiritual, really fulfilling. And through those workshops, I started to really understand what's going on in the world right now. And I really started to understand the mechanism of scarcity that we live in. And I started to understand like, what is this new reality that we are talking about? What is like this, the fifth dimension that those who are more into spiritual being might get to come across, the movement between the third dimension and the fifth dimension that we are going through, and all kinds of like different things. And I started to understand that the shift that we are going through is super dramatic. I totally understood that what we've been preaching for through FreshBiz in the past like 9 years or so is so relevant, so super relevant. Everyone understands it now. Everyone understands that you need a different mindset. You need a super flexible mindset. You need the growth mindset. You need to be very proactive. You need to be super creative, super collaborative. All of that is relevant more than ever. It was kind of like ironic then when the time came that what I was talking about for the past 9 years actually manifested, then the business was closed. It was kind of like an ironic situation, but I said, okay, something else needs to be born, asking to be born. And those workshops were born. And in the past like 6 months or so, I was starting to look back at organizations and companies and looking at what's actually happening in the world right now. And I started to talk about the co-creation era. I think that the next level of FreshBiz, or of the FreshBiz mindset, let's say, not that the world is on the FreshBiz mindset yet. It's like it's still far from that. But when I'm looking forward, I started to understand that the FreshBiz mindset is kind of like the infrastructure or the foundations of the approach that I now call the co-creation era. And this is kind of like the mindset that is required to actually be able to manifest things in this new reality. And I think that it's obvious for everyone that we are in a new reality. It's not like, it's not just a bump in the road now. It's never going to go back to normal. I think that we all see it, we all understand it. Something is changing. I think that even more interesting is that we kind of like experiencing what is called in the blockchain linguicity is what we are experiencing now is forking of reality. Right? We are forking reality into different realities. There is no one reality now. People, when they are going back to work or not going back to work, people are going towards different realities. And we'll see some people that are going to go to a reality which looks like the old reality. It has some minor changes, but they kind of like going back to normal on let's say 90% of the reality they are experiencing. And we're seeing people that are going to a new reality, which is 90% different. And there is everything in between. So we are forking reality into different realities. And I'll explain what I'm saying. Some things will happen faster for some people, and some things will happen slower for other people. It really depends on which reality you choose to live in. But I think that we can say that in the corporate world, everyone understands that things are dramatically changing. Okay? And I want to share with you the presentation that I'm now, I've been doing for the past 6 months, tons of talks and workshops, not FreshBiz talks, but the talk about the co-creation era. I started doing it through Zoom, and then live talks when things got back to live events. And I've been talking to the biggest companies in Israel, and I've been delivering the message, and I've been listening to the market, and I've been starting to develop something which is based on that. And I would like to share this with you guys now. Okay?
Sure.
Any questions so far? We good? Okay, let me just share the presentation. Okay, cool. Okay, so I call it the co-creation era in the future of work. Okay, what is going on? Why things are going on the way they are, and where do I believe we are heading? Okay, I think that what we experience now when we talk to our customers, to the corporates, I think that everybody is talking about the symptoms of the problems of the problem. Let's say a bunch of problems, but let's say a major problem. I haven't really heard anyone actually talking about the problem. I've seen people talking about the symptoms of the problem. I want to touch the problem. Okay. And what I'm showing you now is based not only on my understandings or observations, but on work that I'm doing with friends and colleagues, which are psychologists, anthropologists, people that are coming from tech, tokenomics, Web3 people, like all kinds of really diverse points of views on what's happening now. And I kind of like put them all together with my understanding. And this is what I'm going to share, okay? So what is the co-creation era? Why is it happening now? And what area are we ending, and why, and what the hell is going on? So I think that the era that is coming to an end is the industrial economy, the industrial era, okay? This industrial revolution, which we've been living in for the past 250 years. And the main idea that the industrial revolution brought into our lives is the idea that we can manufacture a lot of the same thing and distribute it as far as we can. And that's the main idea of the industrial revolution. Now, why is it coming to an end? And it's coming to an end because of several things. Number one, there is no longer any competitive advantage or value that we can bring to the market just by being able to manufacture something, right? Because anyone can manufacture anything. So it's no longer an advantage just being able to manufacture something. At the beginning of the century, right, the biggest companies around were the Ford and General Electric and General Motors and all of those who could manufacture and distribute. But manufacturing and distribution is no longer creating value. I can manufacture anything I want in China, and I can sell it in the US, and I can do it from my home in a small town in Israel. And any one of you can do the same, right? So it's no longer an advantage. Second thing is that we can no longer create growth through becoming better manufacturers, right? Because manufacturing or being more efficient in manufacturing is kind of like a race to the bottom, right? And we reach the bottom, right? We can't pay less than $1 a day to a 10-year-old kid in a third country to manufacture our iPhones or our sneakers. It can't go any lower than that. So we can't create growth by becoming better manufacturers. So the market doesn't pay dividends anymore for those who can manufacture or manufacture cheaper. That's a major thing, right? Growth now comes from creativity, not from manufacturing, not from being able to do the same thing over and over again. Another reason that the market is paying to those who are creative is because we are living in such disrupted world that everything is changing constantly, and the change is so significant that we are looking for companies who can provide solutions for this ever-changing world we live in. This is why creativity is so important. It's so important because we are living in an ever-changing reality, and we want different things, and we aspire for different things, and everything we do requires new products and services that are based on creativity, on creative solutions. Now, one more thing which is dramatically changing, and I'll say one more thing before that. One more thing that we understand is that we are now living in a world that we have much more complex systems and much more complex problems. And those systems and problems need solutions that are multidisciplinarity. We can no longer solve problems on ourselves. We have to have good collaboration between different people that are coming from different disciplinarities to be able to solve it. And I think that the coronavirus is a great example for that, because we understand that we can't really thrive through Corona if we don't understand a bit about psychology, economics, medicine, sociology, and that's for us to be able to survive this and thrive with this in our own private homes. That's not even to solve the national problem or the global problem. We got to become really smart and intelligent in so many different dimensions of life. By the way, multidimensional thinking, that was exactly what was required to go through COVID. And that's only the beginning. And we also understand one thing, which is dramatically that competition is no longer the strategy to be able to solve those problems, because we cannot live in a world that the US wins COVID and China loses, right? It's either we all win or we all lose. There is no more competition game around this. And there is no way that, the UK will win global warming and India would lose global warming. It's either we all win or we all lose. So we are coming across challenges that are requiring us to become way more collaborative. As a mindset, we understand that we have to be more collaborative to be able to solve the new problems, right? So creativity and collaboration becomes really, really significant, right? Really significant. And then we also have Web3 that is introduced now into the market and is a game changer, as I see it, and I'll go through why. I believe that Web3 is a big part of the solution and the new reality that we are going to experience. But before we're going to go to the solutions, I want to talk a bit more about the problems, okay? Now, when I said before that what we are most observing now are the symptoms of the problem, is the fact that, I'm sure that you know that as well, when we are talking now to our clients, to corporates, all of them are talking about recruiting and retention, right? I guess you're all experiencing this. Yep. They all have problems with that. Do you also experience this in your own countries?
Absolutely.
It's very hard to recruit people, and retention is almost impossible, right? I think that retention now is around year and a half or 2 years, depends on the industry. And it's across industries. It's not only on the high-tech industry. It's from restaurants through everything else up to the tech industry, all across the board. And why? Because of the great resignation now that we see. Tens of millions of people are resigning from the work in the past 6 months or so. In the US, in Europe, in Israel, I guess in Asia as well. It's all across the board. You experience this as well, right? It's happening everywhere. Now, it's very, very interesting. Now, that's a symptom that the companies are talking about. They see this as a problem, but it's not the problem. It's the symptom of the problem, right? On the other hand, the employees are communicating their symptom, and their symptom is there is too much pressure. It's not sustainable. We can't keep on working such crazy hours with so many tasks. It's never ending. The pressure is so dramatic. We are losing wellness, and there is no life home balance, life work balance. It's like, it's just too much. Do you see that as well in your own regions? So that's the employees. They're experiencing too much stress. I think it's the #1 illness around the globe now, stress. Companies are experiencing problems with recruiting and retention, which creates a very interesting situation in the world now. And let's talk about this for a second. First of all, let's understand the big resignation. It's really interesting. We are experiencing now 2 years of a global pandemic. Unstable world, right? We have war taking place in Europe, okay, which is crazy. No one thought that, Europe can get into war again after 70 years, right? There is a saying that they say no two countries that has McDonald's in will ever fight each other. That just broke down, right? Crazy, right? Now, what we should be expecting to see is people holding to their jobs in such an unstable environment. So why people are quitting? Why people are quitting their jobs in the most unstable times in the past 2 decades? Why is it happening? We should see exactly the opposite. We should see people holding to their sources of income, holding to their jobs. Why is it happening? And it's happening because of a few reasons, and I want to share my ideas about that and what I've seen around going around. And it goes like this. Basically, when we've been quarantined into our own homes, which is kind of like a little prison, right? We can't go anywhere. We can't fly anywhere. We can't go meet anyone. We're kind of like in our own private cell, in our own house. When people got to experience this, they figured out that it's a better option than the prison out there. It's a better option than the prison out there. I rather stay in my home than go back to work. This is how crazy the prison out there is. Right? Now, why is it happening? It's happening because we know, and we talk about this, that what's out there is a fear-based game. We know that. This is what FreshBiz is all about, is breaking this fear-based game. The entire system is based on being a fear-based game. But it only works when you scare people enough to make them comfortably numb, but you don't scare them too much. What happened in COVID is that people were scared or were frightened, right? Just a bit too much. And when you frighten people to the death, they wake up to their lives. That's what's happening. Because people like us in our 40s and 50s got to have conversations about death in the past 2 years, way more than in the last decade. All of us went through this, either within our own heads or with our families or our friends. It was a conversation. And when you have a conversation about death, when people at the age of 40, 30, 40, 50 are thinking about the end of life, or they should be thinking that at the age of 90, or if they, God forbid, got really, really sick, when you have this conversation, it's called conversations of regrets. What are you regretting? And apparently, no one is regretting not spending more hours at the office. Big surprise, huh? No one is regretting not spending more hours in the office. What people are regretting are 4 different things. One is love, okay? Being loved and belonging, right? Which we understand now that the company that calls us part of the family is not really our family. And they would let us go in a second. So we don't get there. We don't get that there anymore. Okay? People are regretting not being brave enough. We are regretting the things we wanted to do, but we weren't brave enough to do. And the corporate environment doesn't provide that either. You don't get the space to be brave or courage or try new things, right? The third one is legacy. What am I leaving behind? And being an employee in a company usually doesn't serve that as well. And the fourth one is morality, right? Do I believe that what I'm doing, engaged in, is as high standards of morality? And many people understand that the companies they work for are not providing them the sense of morality they are looking for in their lives. So people got to the point that they are waking up to understand what's important in life. They already experienced working from home and they see it's possible and it's effective. They experience what it means to be outside of the walls of the castle, because we've been pushed out of it, right? And you have to understand, for people who weren't vaccinated, for example, were pushed out of the walls of the castle. Now, for many people, that was a shocking experience, especially middle-aged white men, because they've never been pushed out of the castle. And if someone like this is pushed out of the castle on a psychological level, that means that I'm experiencing something that I've never experienced before, which is the sense of rejection, but I also get to taste freedom because I'm outside of the walls, and I get to look at sides, and I get to go out to nature. And people got through a very deep psychological process of really figuring out what life should look like. Now, and I think that each and every one of us on a personal level got to experience this. how life should look like. And I'm sure that none of us would like to go back to the way things were before. In addition to that, we've been living in the past 20 years and in the Web 2 economy. And the Web 2 economy proved us something which is super significant. We have to understand that many people that are choosing to go and become employees and not entrepreneurs, for example, are doing this because they are looking for a vehicle for self-expression on scale, okay? For many people, being part of a company is a vehicle for scaling their impact and talent. If I want to impact a million people, I have to go and work in Adidas or Prada or General Motors, so whatever I'm doing will impact a million people. But what Web 2 taught us is that I can impact a million people from my home using my Instagram account or my YouTube account. People got tools for scaling that is not a company. That wasn't there before. People in the 40s, in the 50s, in 1990s, in the year 2000, they couldn't scale who they are without using a company to scale. Now we can. For the past 20 years, the new generation is living in a world that they can create scale without being part of a company. And this is very, very important. This is why now people are resigning from their homes, and they didn't do it after World War I or World War II, because they have other options. They have other options for self-expression and scaling. And that's very, very important, because organizations are losing the traditional role in society. Something really, really dramatic is changing in the role that corporates are playing in economy and in society. And it's very, very important to understand. Now, there is one more very, very major issue that I want to talk about. We are all in the know that the system that we live in is not sustainable. Do you agree? Anyone here understands it? It's not sustainable. We can't keep on playing that game for much longer. We can do it for, I don't know, it's like, let's say another 100 years, 200 years. It's not sustainable because we are using resources in a much faster rate than the natural renewal of those resources. There are no more fish in the sea. We are running out of fish in the sea. We are running out of soil that can create food. We are running out of air that is not polluted. We are using resources in a much faster rate than their natural renewal. And we know that. We all know that. But we are still keep on playing that game because no one could stop the machine. And then came Corona and pulled the handbrake on the entire world and stopped everything for a second so we can think and we can realize what's going on. And even though we know that we are doing this for the past like 40, 50 years, for the past 30 years or 20 years, we all know that, but we are still keep on doing this. Why? Why we kept on doing this? We kept on doing this because the resources that we've been using couldn't call out their, how would I call it? couldn't call out the damage, couldn't call out, please stop. We can't hear the fish in the ocean calling out to stop what we are doing. We are not hearing the soil crying out that we are overusing it. We can't hear it. We can't hear the resources crying over what we're doing to the planet. What happened in the past 2 years is that the one resource that can call out and cry out did. And this one is the human resource. Because our basic approach as an economy, as a culture, and it really doesn't really make a difference if it's capitalism, socialism, communism, it's all the same, okay? We are all approaching everything as an available resource for our usage. That's the humankind mindset. This is how we see the world. We see everything as an available resource for our usage. We don't see a tree, we see a table. We don't see a river. We see a source of energy that we can now manipulate to whatever we need. We look at the world as a set of resources available for usage. And because of that, we got to the point that we see each other like that. We see human as resources. And that's the most humane department in any company. It's the human resource department. That's the most welcoming, warm, ecological department is the human resource department. It's crazy to think about it. And this resource, the one is called the humans, are crying out the cry of not being able to keep on manufacturing faster than the natural pace of renewal our energy. This is why the employees are experiencing stress. They're experiencing stress because they cannot keep on producing without stopping to renew their vitality. Same thing that we can keep on, getting oil out of the soil. We can't keep on taking the fish out of the ocean. We can't keep on doing this. So the human resource is now crying out their cry. And this is why people are resigning. They don't want to live like that. This, with waking up to what's important in life, to understanding that we can scale and impact outside of the companies, all of that creates the fact that we see hundreds of millions of people resigning from the jobs. And it's going to become even crazier. Why? Because the more people resigning, the more pressure is put on the ones who are staying. So they have higher motivation now to resign as well because they can't stand the pressure. It's too much pressure. Now the pressure is generated because we are living in an economy that is constantly asking us to grow. The basic idea is based on constant growth. And it's unnatural to expect never-ending growth. Nature doesn't work like that, right? Nature is a cycle, it's a process. Things are dying and things are borning and things are renewing.
It seems it's frozen.
Yeah, it looks like we're still here.
Yep.
Even though we are after 2 years of a global pandemic, right? And even though there is a war in Europe, we are living in a world in a world of abundance. Most companies now, in the past 2 years, grew. They created amazing growth in some categories. And the reason for that is because there was so much money that was thrown into the market, especially in the US, but it was happening in Europe as well. And from US it goes everywhere, and in Asia just as well. And it's like so much money was thrown into the market that companies grew because of the amount of money that was out there without really generating new value. Now they are expecting to keep on growing, but the money is gone now. There is no new money pulled that is thrown into the market. And the people that got the money to be able to stay at home already used the money. So we are going to see people will start going back to work under different terms for sure, but some of them will go back to work because they will need the money, but the companies wouldn't be able to sustain the growth because the growth wasn't natural. It wasn't based on creating new value. It was just based on throwing money into the market. So most of the companies, and you'll see that, I don't know what the companies are asking from you now, but if you really listen to what they are looking for, they are super stressed about how they are going to keep the growth for next year and for 2024, right? And they all understand that they're probably not going to make it. They're not going to make it, okay? Then they will ask you for whatever you can to help them sustain the people, make them work harder, generate revenues, generate sales, but most of them are going to fail, and we already see this in the markets. If you look at the stock market, you will see companies are starting to fall dramatically. We saw this with Facebook that lost like 25% in one day, not because they lost money, because they only made $33 billion in a quarter or something like that, right? Because they didn't match enough growth as the analysts expected, right? It's impossible, it's unnatural, and it's not sustainable to keep on growing. So it's going to be even more pressure on those who are staying in those companies, right? So this is kind of like where we are at the moment, right? Any questions, thoughts? Do you experiencing this? Do you see this in your markets as well? Do you hear that coming from your clients?
Yes, absolutely. Completely agree with what you've said, Ronen. Across industries is what we are seeing the challenges they are facing right now. Okay, so the challenge of resignation, the challenge of retention, and the challenge of continuously growing is a major challenge which we are seeing there.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks. Sebastian, Yosef, do you see that as well?
Yeah, I do see a lot of, I'd say, some form of desperation where
you're muted, Sebastian.
I feel like a lot of people want to know how to do things when we used to give training and helping them to think critically. And there's a lot of desperation where it's like, well, please just show me a little bit of how things work in other places. And the ironic part is that this is happening in Costa Rica, it's happening in India, it's happening in China, it's happening in Germany. So and there are people from everywhere just with these kind of help me stay above water
exactly.
Outlook.
Yeah. And they're not going to stay above water. But that's a good news, right?
One thing that I'm hearing is, again, people being depressed, and the rates of anxiety is just paralyzing them. And I just recently, I went to the doctor's office to have some blood work done. And the first question was like, have you experienced any depression or anxiety lately? I said, oh, that's the first question. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting question. Do you hear that a lot now? She's like, oh, yeah. So we have been working with groups from varieties of industries, and what you're saying is this element of self-care to feel well and perform at your best. People need to build in their shock absorbers, because life now is high intensity. So, and I'm collaborating with other peak performance coaches, and like for athletes or CEOs, life is always high intensity because stakes are high. And that's how it feels now, even for parents at home, homeschooling, running jobs, everything is high intensity. So it's coming back to the individual to actually manage their state. So because the to-do list, the demands are growing and getting longer and bigger. So what's superior now is the to-be list. And that is something that people can only do for themselves. But the employer can encourage that. And current wellness initiatives of, I don't know, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or some kind of things like that, they're just not measuring up to what's really needed, because it's more in the space of mental health.
And changing the way we do things.
And psychological safety, that comes back, like psychological safety, because people, as soon as they wake up and look at their phone, their psychological safety is compromised. So that's just, and then they get defensive, and then you get ineffective and stupid. So,
in Lithuania, we have another situation, because now we are on the edge of war. So, just it's absolutely different experience. And we call COVID like a rehearsal before the biggest problems, the bigger problems, as it is right now, just war in Ukraine. So it means because Lithuania is, okay, we're not affected too much, but a lot of companies, we are helping, they're donating money to the Ukrainians, they're doing a lot of volunteer work. So it's absolutely different situation right now. And there is a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and also a lot of motivation to do something good, not for business, but for people who are refugees, who are just some people are going to Ukraine to help, to bring stuff to bring back refugees. So that's different story. But I agree absolutely with you. That's those companies who are, let's say, doing business as usual. Of course, they have that's a huge level of stress, of anxiety, of I don't know. So something is just shaking all the time, the people, and just they don't feel even the background under their feet, and even they are afraid of their lives, of lives of their families. So right. What we can talk about the business? It's sometimes not so easy.
Yeah, I totally get it. I understand. Here in Israel, we are in a state of war constantly, and real war threats every few years. So I totally understand what you're talking about. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's see what can we do about this. Okay. So two major things that are part of the new co-creation era, this new economy that we are coming into, where we understand that we have to work together. And I think that, part of this like war environment that we are in and global pandemic that we are in, also bringing people together, bringing people together to understand that we have to collaborate, we have to work together, we have to understand that we are serving a bigger organism than just ourselves or just our own personal business or company. And people are starting to come together to be able to solve those problems and bring creativity into the market. So when I talk to companies about collaboration, and we all know that very well from FreshBiz, we're basically talking about expanding the pie smartly. How can we create an environment, a system, a mechanism that I can expand my own piece without damaging someone else's piece, someone else's part of the pie? How can we really expand this in a smart way? And when we want to do that, then I refer people to what I call the wisdom of the tribe. And the major reason that we find it very hard to collaborate is because of ego, right? You come across this all the time, I guess, right? Even people that are working in the same team, in the same company, with the same goal, cannot really collaborate smartly together because of ego, right? So let's talk about this for a second and why this is very crucial for the solution. In order for us to understand why people aren't being able to collaborate because of ego, we have to understand what ego is. And ego is basically the way that I can understand my my separation from others in the world. So even for those of us who are super evolved and we understand that we are all connected and we are all part of a bigger consciousness or whatever, we still have a sense of self, right? And this sense of self is created because we are separated from other people in some form or way. Now, what culture teaches us about this separation is that we separate ourselves by owning things, by ownership over things, right? So I'm different than you because I have a bigger house or a different car or a different position or a different title. And we are constantly busy creating ownership over stuff, right? Because that's the way we are defining ourselves in the world. So I gotta have this car, I gotta have this house, I gotta have this degree, I gotta have the budget, I gotta have the employees, the reason that another department manager cannot come to my department and take 3 of my people to work on a different project is because I have a sense of ownership over those employees, right? No one will do that. You can't just come into the office in the morning and say, oh, I'm taking those 3 people to work with me on a project because they super love that project and they don't want to work on your projects anymore. You can't do that, right? The moment someone does this, I feel that someone is damaging my sense of self in the world. And this is why we are clashing so fast on ego, because when we are defined by outside parameters that says to us who we are, it's very easy to step on our toes. Right? It's very easy to bring someone else who has the same title as me, or a bigger car than me, or a bigger budget, or more employees, or whatever. Everything that's happening out there immediately reflects on how I see myself in the world. And this is why we are constantly clashing. But if we'll create or kind of embrace a different way to look on our own uniqueness in the world, our definition in the world, by looking inside, not outside, in saying that me being different from you is not based on my car or my title or my budget, but it's rather based on my unique skills and ability and my unique path in the world, then you can't clash this. No one else can do me better than me, right? No one else can do you better than you. it can never clash. We can always we can only help each other doing our own unique path in the world. If we have the basic understanding that there are enough resources for all of us to be able to work together. Because competition is based on two elements. It's based on the belief that there isn't enough resources, right? Otherwise, why compete if there are enough resources? But that's not enough. The second term is that I don't care enough about the other people. Because if I do care enough, even if there is lack of resources, I would look for ways to share those, right? You are not hiding food from your family when it's Friday morning and you didn't go to the supermarket yet and the refrigerator is kind of empty. You're not starting to hide food from other family members because you care about them. You'll share whatever you have. The moment we stopped caring about other people, once we zoom out enough and we don't care about other people, then we are okay with competing over resources. Now, the entire culture is based on separating us from ourselves and from nature, from others and from nature. We are constantly moving away from our basic care for each other and our care for nature. So we see everything as available resources for use, not for someone that we should care about. But if we are, putting the light inside, right, then we start understanding that what we want to do is we want to be in our zone of genius. And I want to talk about this for a second. Each and every one of us has a zone of genius. What is it, the zone of genius? The zone of genius is where those things that you do so good, which is you do it better than anything else you do, and you're probably doing it better than the average person out there, okay? So for example, my zone of genius is to be able to fire up people about new ideas, okay? My competence zone is putting on a shelf. I can do it. I definitely shouldn't do it all day long, right? Now, it's really, really important. Why? That's part of why people are resigning. People are resigning because most people are not engaged in the zone of genius. Best case scenario, people are engaged in what is called their zone of excellence, okay? Which is something that I'm really good at, right? But they are not genius at that zone. Bye, Sebastian, if you have to go, so I'll see you. Bye. And most people are even not in their zone of excellence. They are maybe in their zone of capability. They know how to do that stuff, but they are not really, really good there. Why is it that important? Is that important because when we are in our zone of genius, we are experiencing flow. We are in our element. Remember those days that where you do something, you really feel that, yes, this is what I should be doing in the world. This is exactly what I came here to do. This is what I enjoy the most. I kind of like lose sense of time and space. You know that? You know that feeling? This is when you're in your zone of genius. You are experiencing moments of grace. And if you want people to be engaged, you need to provide them an environment where they feel enough moments of grace. And what's happening now is that most people that are coming to work in the morning are not experiencing enough moments of grace during the day. And for sure not during the month. And this is why retention is so low. You don't have to talk about retention if you have people posted in the zone of genius. They're self-motivated. You don't need to motivate them so much. They're already self-motivated because they are in their zone of genius. So what we want to create is people working in their zone of genius. Now, the problem with companies nowadays is that they don't know what the zone of genius is of their employees, and they don't post them in their zone of genius, and they expect them to do so many tasks that are a must do, but not something that I would actually choose to do if I had the choice. And this is why retention is so crazy, because nowadays in Generation Z and all of those, they are looking for self-expression. They like to enjoy life. We call them that they are privileged or whatever, but we are living in a world of prosperity and people would like to experience moments of grace. Okay? So we can actually experience this win to the win power that we are talking about. What is multiple wins on multiple dimensions for multiple people? It's a lot of people experiencing moments of grace most of the time. This is how we create win to the win power. We allow people to experience this for as much as possible. And this is where people are most creative. So how do we do this? What do we want to have for companies to create? So first of all, we want them to create creative people. Now, what is creativity? And this is really, really important. I'll try to kind of like put everything together in the next 15 minutes, okay? I just want to wrap everything up, but it's really important just to wrap things up. What is creativity? And because we're talking so much about creativity in FreshBiz, but how creativity is actually generated in the brain. Now, creativity in the brain is when our neurons are creating a specific sequence, a specific path in our brain for the first time. This is what a creative thought is all about, because everything else are already wired roots in our brain. The reason we don't have to learn how to drive every time we get into a car is because there is already a root in our brain that fires up a sequence of neurons in a specific sequence that knows how to drive. A creative thought is when a set of neurons is fired in a specific path for the first time. Now, this can happen in our brain or in our commune brain. When a team sits together, if there is a new path of thinking rising within that team, that's a creative idea through a team. Now, the way to create new path is by two elements. One, we need many points, so we can connect new points, right? So we need many points. Many points is diversity, is multidisciplinarity. Diversity, it's not just a PC word for creating a more diverse world. It's really crucial for creative thinking. The only way we can do that is by having different people with different ways of viewing the world sitting together and creating ideas. This is how we create more points. So either I do it with inside my own brain, I learn a lot of stuff, or I try to look at things from different points of views, or I put people together to do it. When I do that with other people, I'm just like shortcutting. It's a hack, because I don't need to go through the experiences of all the other people. I'm already hacking into already path that was created by other people that they're sharing with me. It's so much faster and so much ecological, right? And so much logical to share different paths of ways of seeing the world, put them together and create new connections. And the other thing, after having all those different points, is being able to connect them together in different ways. And connecting dots in different way is based on the ability to create understandings, okay? To create, how do you call it in English? Actually, new context, okay? Now, you can see this when you see people brainstorming, for example. When you come to a brainstorm meeting, for example, and someone has an idea, the first reaction that everyone else has is, first of all, no, that wouldn't work, right? We are immediately objecting to this. It's kind of like a natural thing for us because it's different than our point of view, right? So we are rejecting the idea. The secret for creativity is putting curiosity before judgment, right? Putting curiosity before judgment. If Yosef, for example, says, look, the way we can get to $1 billion in sale is by waking up every day at 4 a.m. Before I say, no, if I would be curious enough to understand what made Yosef think that, what within his life story got him to this conclusion or this understanding, if I would be able to walk into his shoes and look at life through his eyes, then I'm creating a new path, right? That's really, really crucial. What we want to create in companies is talent density. Super talented people that are coming together to create new ideas and bring them into life. In order for us to do that, we need to create a culture of freedom. And this is the major part that most companies are missing. If you want to have talents in your organization, people that are creative needs freedom. And companies are not providing enough freedom. So people are quitting to find their freedom outside. We need to create a culture of freedom and responsibility. I'll give you enough freedom, you'll take the responsibility to do that. The thing is that most people are not looking for more responsibilities. People are saying that they are looking for higher levels of freedom, but they're not willing to take more responsibilities because we've been cultured, educated, not to look for freedom, but to look for vacations. We are looking for those moments where we can take off responsibilities because we are so stressed. But freedom is all about taking more responsibility over our freedom. Right? And companies do not know how to create a culture of freedom and responsibility. And that's very, very crucial that we will teach them how to do that. I'll skip this one. So what I've been starting to do lately is I've been starting to work on a new venture. And this new venture is around co-creation. How can we create together? Right? How can we form new structures, new technologies, new mechanisms that will allow us to create together? Because if a company is looking for a solution to recruit more people or to or a high level of retention, whenever someone comes to me and talks about retention, I say, look, guys, forget about it. You are not going to come up with a magic pill that will keep people 6 years in your company. It's not going there. There is no cure for people quitting. You got to come up with a new system. It's not about retention anymore. It's about creating motivation for people to be engaged in projects, in creations. Now, how do you do that? You do that, first of all, but by letting the person with the idea form the band. Look, at the end of the day, what are we looking for? What people are looking for? We are looking for a way to work on the things we would love to do, our zone of genius. We want to do it with the people that we like to do it with. and we would like to be smartly compensated for it. Do you agree? If we can wake up in the morning, do what we like to do, it's in our zone of genius, we experience moments of grace, we do it with people that we would like to work with, and we are compensated smartly on that, then there is no conversation about recruiting and retention, because I want to do it. That's the way I want to live, right? So how do you do it? So what we've been doing, me and two of my new partners, has been working on a platform that will allow this in companies. We want people to be able to opt in into creations and opt out of it once they are done with their zone of genius. The main problem nowadays with companies is that when you opt in for a job, for all that comes with it. If I'm now the CFO, I have to do everything that is in my job description. I'm not coming home. I'm not coming to the office in the morning and say, look, I do this and this and this and this and this and this I don't like to do. Give it to someone else. You can't, cherry pick what you like to do. You have to do what your manager tells you that you have to do, or what your job descriptions tells you to do. And most of it is not within our zone of genius. So the only way, right, for us to stop doing the things we don't like to do is to opt out of the entire job, right? But what we actually want to do, we just want to opt in into only the things we'd like to do. So how do we do it? And this is where Web3 comes handy. One of my partners, her name is Adi, she's a tokenomics expert, and we are bringing ideas and concepts and mechanisms from blockchain and crypto and Web3 into that solution. One of them is what is called bounty hunters. Bounty hunters is the ability to do a task for a specific bounty. I want to opt in for something that I know what my compensation is, and I want to opt out once I'm done, and I know exactly what I'm earning, and I'm not depending on my boss being nice to me, giving me a bonus at the end of the year or whatever, okay? I know exactly what's the bounty. We're using another term which is called staking, is the ability to stake for something. I'm risking something so I can gain something, right? And we're talking about smart contracts, which is coming from the world of crypto, which means that my compensation is already based on a smart contract and it's not dependent on office politics, right? And that's very, very important, because nowadays when people are opting into a job, they don't have smart contracts. They are mostly dependent on one or two people that should promote them, give them bonuses, whatever, right? And it has to do all with office politics way more than my performance, right? And we need to change that. So for conclusion, to wrap this up, I just want to share with you what we've been working on for the past few months. And we believe that is something that is going to revolutionize the way people work. And then I'll say a few words on how this goes with FreshBiz.